Hello, I am Jamaludheen. We are starting a new podcast where I'll be sharing my wisdom of the spiritual and scientific message in the Quran, how the Quran is the continuation of the wisdom of ancient Egypt, about how to awaken your mind and find your inner connection with the source or Allah or the universal consciousness. Today we will be seeing my translation of chapter 96 of the Quran, which is called the bonding, and the Arabic word is Alaq. So Quran is one of the most misunderstood scripture on earth, and I feel it is one of the most important as well, because we have lost how to live holistically in oneness with the universe by, as in the words of Quran, by witnessing the supreme being in us as one with the universe. And the main problem for all the sufferings that the human beings are going through are because the human beings lost their way of understanding their connection with the source. Now everyone works as a divided and distracted being from the source, so they have lost their connection, their coherence, and they could no longer understand their purpose, and they no longer can contribute to their own self. So the importance of understanding the Quran, the spiritual message, the practices mentioned there is very, very important at this age, and I hope I will be able to inspire some people to understand the true essence of the wisdom. So the chapter 96, the bonding, starts with read. The Arabic word is Iqra, and Iqra is actually the root qara'a, which is actually the root for Quran as well. And Iqra means read, Quran means reading. So Quran is actually the spiritual practice of reading your mind, reading the neural vibrations in your head, or reading your brain waves and understanding the coherence and state of your mind, and bringing coherence and stillness into your mind, and awakening and raising your mind so that you can awaken your consciousness. So that is the practice, or that is the purpose of the Quran. And read means to read your mind, your coherence, the vibration. And Quran is a document used by the Nabateans in Petra and in Al-Ula in Saudi Arabia. So they were practicing this by sitting in the resonance chamber. So once you go and sit in the resonance chamber, you can amplify the sound of your brain waves or the vibration in your head. So when you go inside a resonance chamber, the same is what happens when you listen through EEG, the biofeedback. The same thing, we can read our mind. So that is exactly what is meant by read, by raising to your highest self, the one measuring. So how can we read our mind? To read, we need to raise your highest self. The highest self is the dimension of our existence, which is called Rab, or the individual consciousness, where which controls all other lower entities. So if you understand a fundamental existence of a person, he has a body, he has mind, he has energy, and all these exist in the consciousness or the highest self, the individual consciousness or the highest self. So this highest self is where you are fundamentally generating everything else. So once you completely find internal stillness, and you not engage or attract with any incoherences in your mind, you can feel and sense your being as a the highest self, is the individual consciousness. So by raising to your highest self, the one measuring, so what it the first verse tells us that read by raising to your highest self, the one measuring. The highest self, the oversoul, the Rab, in the Arabic word it is called Rab. The ancient Egyptians understood it as Nab, and they personified it as Osiris. And once you go to your highest self and start reading your mind, the lower entities of the mind and your being, you can understand that you can feel the vibration much clearer when you awaken yourself and raise yourself to the highest self or your individual consciousness. And from there you can see that entity, the I am, or the highest self, the oversoul, is the one which is seeing the entire thing or the entire being of yourself, the one measuring you. So measuring the second chapter, second verse starts with measuring the conscious mind from support of relationship to the subconscious. So the Arabic word Alaq is actually measuring, and the act of measuring with your mind is what Alaq means. So measuring the conscious mind, the Arabic word for conscious mind is insan, and the ins means the sociable or conversible, the mind which is the front side, which is a familiar part of the whole mind. So measuring the conscious mind from support of relationship to the subconscious. So in the whole consciousness, the mind is divided into the familiar part, the conscious mind, and the unfamiliar part, the subconscious, or the thing which exists by itself, but when we try we can access it. So the subconscious and the conscious mind work in relationship with each other. So for example, your reasoning, the ability to reason, is actually a conscious function. So when you want to reason about something, you are actually using your thinking, which is actually a conscious lower function, and your cognition. So if you can think and use your cognition, which is the subconscious function, together, then only you can build a reason. So that is exactly what we can find in the brain waves as well. So if you so this is thinking, this is cognition, and this is reasoning. So in the brain wave, we can understand that always your reasoning is influenced by how do you think and how do you become cognitive in the subconscious. So that is exactly what is mentioned here as measuring the conscious mind from support of relationship to subconscious. So any conscious function, which is actually a relationship or a joint a joint performance from the conscious and subconscious mind. So that is why if you are emotionally agitated, you will never be able to understand things clearly. That is why if you cognitively deny something, you will never be able to reason. If you are in fear, you will not be able to be cognitive of what is happening. So that is exactly what mean by measuring the conscious mind from support of relationship to the subconscious. Read by your highest self, the highermost. So as I said, reading your entire conscious and subconscious mind from the highest self, from the individual consciousness, from the oversoul, or the I am, and seeing how all the downward things are actually performing by itself, how it is existing. So once you understand and you are self-aware about what is happening inside your mind through observing these vibrations in your head, and you awaken yourself to the highest most oversoul of yours, the I am, that which witnesses everything, you can understand. If you are in fear, there is a different vibration. If you are sad, there is different vibration. If you are anxious, there is different vibration. If you are judging something, you are in a different vibration. So instead of going with incoherences, in the Quranic word it's called kufr, you have to be stable, that is amana or iman, and you become at most still in your mind, and then you create the utmost clarity where you can access your highermost self, or I am, or the oversoul in its utmost clarity. So that is what it means by read the mind by your highest self, your oversoul, I am, or your individual consciousness being the highermost in the mind, the one understood with trimming. So the highermost mind, I am, or oversoul, can only be understood by trimming all other layers of mind which you have built into it. So if you are a person who are stuck in the conscious or subconscious, lower subconscious or lower conscious mind functions, like if you are a person stuck in the anxiety, you will never be able to feel the depth of your oversoul, because always you will engage with the ego that you have created with your anxiety. Or if you are a person who is affected by the fear or sadness or anger, all these are egos which we created inside our mind, and these things are the layers on our mind which creates incoherences in the view of your mind from the highest self to the lower self. So if you do not make these vibrations, these mind functions, as a stable and still one, the clarity of the mind will be decreased. So what you can do is always trim away all these incoherences and ego and the layers that you have created in the mind by going into formless and ceasing all the mind activities and just existing as being in an energy form and existing as the highest self, the oversoul. So that is what it mean by the one understood with trimming. And 96.5, training the conscious mind what not it understands. So when you understand who am I, or what is my oversoul, how does it sees the all lower mind functions, it gives a new skill of understanding the self, seeing the self, uh, training the conscious mind, what not it understands. So a person who is become calm for the first time through meditation, and when he analyzes his layers of consciousness, he understands that when you become calm, you have an ability to become self-aware and see what the mind is doing. So that ability, which is understood only through training the conscious mind by practice, is what it mentioned here. Rather, the conscious mind is excessive. So the conscious mind always falls easily to things or to incoherences and situations, because the moment you are incoherently emotional with a situation, it will affect the conscious mind. So even though emotion is a subconscious function, it actually affects the conscious mind more. The moment your emotion is anger or sadness, it affects the way you understand things, it affects the way you reason, it affects the way you think. So even though the conscious mind is a mere reflection of the subconscious, we feel that always our conscious function is something more powerful, and it always becomes an excessive in its working. So that is what it's mentioned in the 96:6, and 96:7 tells that because it sees itself self-sufficient. So we all every time expects that we can handle everything in the conscious mind, but in reality, conscious mind is something, a mere reflection of what you are in your subconscious, how you are cognitive, how you are emotional, how you are attentive. That is what is reflected outside in conscious mind as how you think, how you reason, and how you understand. Because it sees itself self-sufficient to your highest self. And 96:8, to your highest self is the returns. And the evolution of your mind is such that when we start with the subconscious, then we build skills in the conscious mind, and finally we understand the whole power. The real control is not in how we think, how we understand, or how we feel and sense and all. The real power is how we are using the highest self, the oversoul, the I am. How much you are confident in the I am, that is what is your life. So that is what it means, to your highest self is the returns. And 96:9, have you observed the one prohibiting? So in the layers of the mind, always there are incoherences which prohibits the self to access the highest self. So for example, when you fall for anger, that is a prohibition which forbids you the clarity of the highest self or your oversoul or I am. So that is what it means here. And 96:10, a nurturing when it connects. So when you try to be in your highest self, witnessing I am in its utmost clarity, and there always happens some incoherences like fear, anger, anxiety, judgment, or any incoherences in the mind which create a prohibition in the nurturing of your highest self, your oversoul, and when it tries to connect. And 96:11, have you observed if it is upon the right course? So in every day-to-day life activities, there is always situations and experiences where you will be going through incoherences like anger, sadness, fear. So we should develop our mind clarity such a way that all this incoherence should not be prohibiting our deep internal experience of the highest self, or I am. So people who can understand and feel and sense the truest fundamental existence, I am, they have the deeper clarity in life. Have you observed if it is upon the right course or instructs with mindfulness? So we need to check always in the mind whether each moment are we falling for the incoherences created by our ego. Like when you become fearful for no reason, and when you fall for that fear, the whole mind layers are affected, and it creates a depreciation in the clarity of consciousness. So every mind activity performed incoherently can affect your mind clarity and your ability to be your highest self, the truest I am. So one practice which will make you to put a filtering process for all your incoherent performances in the mind is to develop the quality or the skill of mindfulness. So from the point of view of Quran, the Arabic word Taqwa is the skill of mindfulness. And what is mindfulness is? Mindfulness is keeping your attention and awareness on the present moment by feeling and sensing the internal working of your mind. So the skill of mindfulness is to see what is happening in all layers of your mind and making sure it is not going to incoherences is what is the mindfulness. And 9613, have you observed if it denies and turns away? So in mindfulness, the skill of mindfulness, it's always observing and being aware. How is your feeling happening? Am I feeling incoherently, or am I denying the feeling? Am I sensing right, or am I becoming oversensitive? Am I being attentive, or am I getting distracted? Or am I understanding it right, or am I judging? Am I reasoning it right, or am I being anxious? So am I thinking right, or am I overthinking? So all these layers of mind has to be observed, and this practice of observing and being aware and attentive of the present moment of yourself and being in the raised mind is what is called the mindfulness. And it is always an observation of denial happening in your mind, if your mind turning you away into incoherences. Does not it understand that the Supreme Being sees? So from the point of view of Quran, the oversoul, the Rabb, is actually existing in a field of consciousness, and that field of consciousness is what the Supreme Being or Allah. So your highest self, your individual consciousness exists in a supreme consciousness, and every human being's individual consciousness exists in a supreme consciousness, and we are all connected each other through our deepest form. So the Supreme Being, Allah, or the word Allah is derived from Ilah, the Ilah, or Allah. So what it means is, Ilah means being. That is exactly what is the word in Hebrew Bible as well, Elohim, and that is what is same as Allah. So Allah is actually the word for the supreme being, the system or the framework at which everything in the universe exists. So your highest self, when you can feel, you can experience your highest self in its purest clarity without any incoherences, being mindful and being self-aware, you can feel the existence of your highest self in the Allah, or you can witness the existence of Allah. And that is what the whole core practice of the Quran, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, that means witnessing there is no being other than the supreme being. So once you surrender your Rabb, surrender your highest being, your oversoul, to its system, you feel the existence of the supreme being. That is what it is, la ilaha illallah. There is no being other than the supreme being, and there is nothing that anybody can do without the observation of the supreme being, because everything in the universe, every energy, every matter, every form, every thing exists in the universe, and we are all part of Allah, and we are capable of witnessing Allah in through us and connect to the source, the entirety, once you build clarity and coherence in your being. Not at all. If it does not stop, we will surely seize it by the forelock. So any incoherence in the mind, so if you are a person interested in the neuroscience field, you can see the default mode network, the way the mind automatically starts working by itself in the incoherent way. So the Egyptians understood that the default mode networks exist in the crown of the head, and they had a depiction where the king holding the overhead and beating with an armor or something. So what it depicts is that the forelock, the people know the forelock is the place where the mind or coherent or consciousness gets corrupted, and that is exactly the place where, when you bring coherence, the awakening happens. So the forelock, as Egyptians understood, that is the place where you need to build the control, the head, the crown area. So we will surely seize it by the forelock. So what it mentions is, from scientific point of view, the seizing of default mode network of the mind. It's forelock on denying and intentionally committing the mistake. So they understood the forelock is the place where the default mode network, which makes the mind to go to incoherent way always. So if a person is being emotionally angry, he is nurturing anger in himself, and it has become a default way of working in the mind, it will always work on the incoherent way of being in anger toward the situation. So to reprogram this default mode network, we need to reprogram the subconscious mind by mindfulness practices, or by learning through biofeedback system and nurturing coherent way of using the mind. Then let it seek and gather. We will seek the thrusting to the distant. So this default incoherent way of working the mind always create incoherences, and it makes the person to drift away from his deepest self. So if you are a person engaged in overthinking, engaged in anxiety, engaged in self-judgmental or judging others, what it does is, you are moving away from your own deeper self and getting drifted away, which is called shatanu or shaitan, which means drifting away from your inner self and wandering in the mind. And the last verse says, no, do not permit it. Don't wander and drift away from the self, but be submissive by nearing to the self. So if you want to understand the self, if you want to connect to the source, if you want to witness your consciousness in the clarity, it is always through nearing to your entire self and not by drifting away outside of yourself. So this is the wisdom of chapter 96 of the Quran, and it's a beautiful way of understanding the layers of consciousness and the subjective experiences we can understand by looking into this deeper wisdom. And many words are actually totally misunderstood, and the problem with the traditional translations were most of the people who did not understand the layers of consciousness, the spiritual clarity, the practices of the mind, the link with the source of the ancient wisdom of Egypt, try to fill what they don't know with what they could make out with the mind. So many words have been misunderstood. So I this is my honest effort to translate the Quran to its original meanings, which has literally, by checking each word by word with the lexicons, and by doing that I was able to understand a very deeper wisdom of the Quran, how to read your consciousness by listening to the neural firing of your mind and bring coherence and awaken yourself and become the truest form, the I am, and understand your nearness with your source and live a life of coherence. So if you have listened this far, I'm very happy to be with you, and I hope the new way of explaining the subjective experience of the Quran will help a lot of people. So let me know your views and your understandings from this video, and thank you for being with me. See you in the next video.